The Biden administration's foreign policy taking another hit, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken announcing the controversial decision to reopen the Palestinian consulate in East Jerusalem. So joining us now to discuss is the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel, and also the author of the book Confronting Radicals and What America Can Learn from Israel, David Rubin. Good morning to you, David.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Rachel.
Nice to have you. Now, President Trump closed that consulate in 2018 because of the Palestinian Authority's pay-to-slay program. And as we know, that's where families of terrorists were compensated by the government. So what are the consequences now of reopening it?
And they continue to be compensated by the Palestinian Authority. They have been giving many, many millions of dollars every single month to every terrorist that kills or wounds an Israeli. It's a bizarre policy for those who are looking for some objective behavior, some diplomacy, but that's their policy, and those are their actions. Now, they want to have a consulate for the Palestinian Authority. Basically, it would be a U.S. Consulate. Israel is dead set against it. The Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, is dead set against it. It was discussed in the recent meeting with President Biden in Washington, and it was made very clear that Israel is absolutely against that consulate being placed in Jerusalem. There is already an embassy. There is no need for an additional consulate.
And David, can you explain how fragile the governing coalition is and how this decision could destabilize the government?
Well, there were a couple of meetings in the past couple of months in Washington. One was Bennett and Biden. The other was his foreign minister, who is the left side of the governing coalition. Okay, this is another so-called unity coalition we have in Israel. Where you have the left, which is represented by Yair Lapid and the Arab Party and the far left Meretz Party, and then you have Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister, who represents the right of center, and he is against the consulate. Lapid has been kind of wishy-washy. Okay, the left of center Lapid, the foreign minister, has been kind of wishy-washy. When he had his meeting in Washington with Blinken, he didn't take a clear stand against the consulate. Bennett was very annoyed about that, and the tension is starting to tear apart the coalition. And the tension is also great between Bennett and Biden over that issue.
Now, David, the Palestinians refused to negotiate back in 2018 when Jared Kushner was pushing that two-state peace plan. Do you believe there's any expectations that the Palestinian Authority will in fact negotiate if the U.S. makes this gesture?
Oh, no, of course not. Look, for 40 years, they've been accepting gestures, putting them in their pocket like any good poker player, and then demanding more. They don't want to negotiate in any seriousness. What they want is the state of Israel, and they're not going to get it, frankly, but they want it, and they're going to continue to demand and demand. You know, they're like a wolf that is given a piece of steak, and he'll eat the piece of steak, sure, but then he wants to eat the human being after. So that's what appeasement does. And as I explained in my book, Confronting Radicals, What America Can Learn from Israel, giving the wolf a piece of steak is not going to satisfy him. And you have to be aware that radicals will not be appeased. And that's what the consulate story is all about. If you appease them with a consulate, they will demand an embassy.
All right, David Rubin, thank you so much for joining us this morning to share your insight.
Thank you, Rachel.